Hey everybody! It's my live Patreon hangout once again. We're actually going to do two of these this month because May has 5 Sundays, and I had to miss one last month, I think it was, or the month before.
hmm
So we're going to do five of them. But yeah, we're going to do
Five of
two
them?
of them.
We're gonna.
Two of them. Five Sundays, two hangouts. We're not going to do five hangouts. That
Oh,
would
like
not.
Steve, I don't have the time for that.
Yeah, we're doing these every week now. The hell with that. No, it's not going to happen. But anyway, hi everybody. Thank you all for joining me. How is everybody doing?
Very well, actually.
Good, good.
It's been a very busy weekend for me.
Has it? What have you been up to, Matthew?
This weekend, if you don't know, is the DC 48-hour film project.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of films in our earlier conversation,
Yes.
so starting Friday night, you get basically elements for a plot, not for a plot, but elements for a story. So you're given a character, an occupation, a line of dialogue, a prop, and then you're given a genre, and then you have 48 hours to run out, film it, write the story, film it, edit it, and submit it. So our team submission needs to be in just under 7 hours. So hopefully the editing process is getting finished up. So
You did this last year, didn't you?
yes, it's an annual event here in DC. In fact, DC is so popular that they'll do two of them in DC, and then Baltimore I think is in June. So if anyone living in the area wants to get involved, have you ever done anything like that, Steve?
No, there's also one in Frederick that's a 72-hour festival. I almost did that one a couple years ago when I was talking with some of the other guys that are in the filmmaking company that I work with sometimes, and we were talking about doing the 72-hour festival, but we ultimately didn't do it because we had a project we were working on at the time, and we just decided to focus on that instead. But I mean, 72 hours sounds daunting to me, so 48 is even more amazing. I mean, but when you see some of the movies that come out of those festivals, some of it is really good. Like, it's really impressive to see what some teams come up with when they only have a couple of days to complete an entire project.
The DC project has 7, and of course it is short films, 4 to 7 minutes long. You've got to involve all the pieces that they give you. And it's amazing how different teams will take the same pieces that they were given and make such different programs out of it.
Yeah,
Sounds like a wild time.
It was a long time for us because we started filming at 7 a.m. and then we stopped filming a little after 7 p.m. because we lost our light, basically. So hopefully we had all the scenes filmed before we lost our light. The 12 hours of filming.
Because you don't have time to go back and pick anything up, right? I mean, if you don't get something, you have to just make it work without it.
Yeah. Ugh. So the editors are really important in a good 48-hour film project.
That's amazing. Well, good luck.
Thank you. So they show it at the AFI Silver this coming weekend.
You know, that's the other cool thing about those film festivals that that hold contests like that is for a lot of up-and-coming filmmakers, that's your first chance to actually get your work shown on a big screen in front of an audience. You know, it's so important to reach that milestone especially if it's something that you really want to do with your life. I mean, I can speak from experience what a huge moment that is to be sitting in an audience in a theater and see a movie that you helped to make show up on the screen, and there's an auditorium full of people watching it. Whether it's the 48-hour fest or some other, like in my case it was a regional film festival that we submitted to a couple years ago, that's like a huge milestone for anybody.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I was just thinking about one of the more fun classes I took in college was a theater class, and what was really enjoyable, the most enjoyable part, was the more unstructured bits where they just said, okay, throw together a scene using this, this, and this, and only doing this. And you really put your problem-solving skills to the test. And what was most gratifying for me was whenever, say, I was like, okay, well, let's throw in this little twerk here. And the teacher would point it out when she was commenting on the scene, like, hey, that was a really good touch right there. And that was just such a, like, yay!
There's something like it doesn't make sense until you do it, until you have the experience, but there's something about imposing limitations on the creative process that can just light it on fire. You know, like if you tell yourself, okay, I want to, like, say I'm making a video, you know, and the video is not going to be any longer than 5 minutes, you know, period. It's an ironclad rule. I won't go 5 minutes and 1 second. It'll be 5 minutes long. And there's something about that limitation that just makes you be more creative, because you have to fit it within those boundaries, you know. Or I'm not going to use a certain word, or, you know, there's constrained writing where people say I'm going to write, but I'm not going to use a particular letter. And it sounds ridiculous. Like, why would you do that? But sometimes it can really inspire you, you know, because you have to come up with things that you wouldn't ordinarily have to do. You know?
Like what was that book that somebody wrote so long ago? It's probably like a short story that has absolutely no occurrence of the letter E.
Yeah.
It's
That's
not
actually-
short. It's actually a very long book.
I think the one I'm thinking of, there have been a couple of them. The one I'm thinking of is called Gadsby. And and it's like a real book. Like, it's not just a gimmicky sort of, you know, I mean, some of the sentences are a little awkward, but it's and you think, oh, why would you take away E? That's the most popular letter, but somehow they managed to
That's
do
what
it.
makes it the challenge, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah, the thing is too, I mean, you know, stuff like that. I think back on when I was going to school at Case Tech, you know, fun stuff like this, like the film business and, you know, improvising. You know, there was no theater class when you're trying to become an electrical engineer. It's just not part of the curriculum at all.
Hey, I was an aerospace engineer.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I think I can count the number of liberal arts courses I took on the 5 fingers of one hand, and maybe add 1 or 2, if that. And I don't know, I really feel like I missed something. And because I remember having a lot of fun fooling around with acting in high school, and I also, you know, had fun as a, you know, doing creative writing here and there. But it was just not part of the scene, and it pisses me off that it didn't. You know, I've been trying to fill in since that time, and you know, succeeding somewhat. You know, I post a lot on Atheist Nexus, and I like to think I write a fairly good stick. But it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if I'd had a chance to exercise and actually learn more about that the way you did, Steve, because I mean, that was an integral part of what you were doing.
Yeah, well, and I was just thinking as you were saying that you felt like you missed out. I kind of feel the same way, because I had the opposite experience where I wanted to take more science classes, but I couldn't fit them in to my schedule because I was an English major, and I had to take the writing classes and the literature classes, and I don't regret any of that, obviously. I think those were amazing classes, and I'm much better for having taken them. But I remember particularly when I was, because I started at a 2-year, like a junior college, and then I transferred to the 4-year university to finish everything. And when I got to the 4-year college, I remember in particular there was an astronomy class that I really, really wanted to take, and I make it work. And I still kind of regret that, because I was like, because astronomy is like, I mean, that's like my thing. I love astronomy. I've always loved astronomy since I watched Carl Sagan's Cosmos the first time when I was like 5 years old, and I really wanted to take that class, and I just couldn't take it. And you know, as it stands, the science classes that I did get a chance to take in college are some of my best memories of college classes. You know, I took a couple. I got to take a couple biology courses just to fulfill my science requirements, and they were awesome because we talked about evolution. I had a class that I took called Unity and Diversity of Living Things that was basically just an evolution class. That was all that we did, you know. And there was even a little bit of cosmology at the beginning, because he talked about, you know, how the certain elements were created inside of stars, and that's how we have heavier elements. And I, you know, even though I went to college for writing and for English, I still look back on those science classes and think, man, those were awesome. I wish I could have taken some more of those. You know?
Well, you have to be careful to a certain degree, because I mean, when I was getting into engineering, I mean, it's extremely, it's not, you know, so much descriptive as it is detailed, you know, digging down into, you know, differential equations and complex analysis and stuff that, I mean, I didn't graduate from Case so much as I survived it. And one of the things I would have loved to have had is like a history of, electronics or something like that, talking about guys like Michael Faraday and Georg Ohm and the experiments that they did, just sort of fill it out a little bit, instead of being so utterly dryly technical.
I can step in there and recommend a book called Science, a History. I actually have it in the other room, but the author basically starts at the beginning of science and treats it as a history of the individuals and builds up their knowledge over time.
That would be very cool.
So, if you give me 2 minutes, I'll go grab it and I can give you the exact reference.
Yeah, it's interesting because my the president of Keithley Instruments, where I used to work, Joe Keithley Sr., actually, I believe he wrote a book on the history of metrology, and which I got, and that was kind of neat because it gets into the whole business of what I spent 24 years doing was, dealing with devices that measure, very small electrical signals, current and voltage, in a, in a semiconductor environment.
Oh hell, what was I going to say?
I don't know. What were you going to say?
Good question, Lauren. I was recently talking to my brother, because we have conversations like this all the time, but we were talking about basically comparing like what we know today to someone from like the 1600s, because it's amazing when you look at like the breadth of knowledge that has been gained over just even 100 years. Yeah. Like try to explain to someone from 1850 how a computer works, and you have to go over like 20 different individual pieces.
You'd have to start with electricity. You'd have to start with Ohm's law. I mean, Ohm's law to me, that's the foundation to me on which the whole thing is built. Then you have to talk about the idea of opening and closing a circuit, and then the idea of being able to partially open and close a circuit, which is what a vacuum tube or transistor allows you to do.
Heck, you go back far enough, you have to explain what elements and atoms are and what electrons are to tell them what electricity is, and it's like, and the thing is, what's crazy is that people these days know all, maybe not all the very technical computer stuff, but like a huge swath of that. You can just just off the top of your head be like, oh yeah, atoms, electrons, and copper wiring.
On one of Seth Andrews' podcasts recently, that they were bringing up, this I think it was homeschooling, where they had one of these books that says nobody really knows what electricity is. And I am doing my damnedest to avoid a thermonuclear facepalm. Just go, it's the motion of electrons, valence electrons in a conductive environment. Come on, you guys.
I have that reference if you guys want it very quickly. It's
okay.
Science, a History, written by John Gribben. Looks to be published by Penguin Books, and here's the back page. Science, a History is the enthralling story of the men and women who changed the way we see the world and the turbulent times they lived in. From Galileo, tried by the Inquisition for his ideas, to Newton, who wrote his rivals out of the history books, from Marie Curie, forced to work apart from male students for fear that she might excite them, to Louis Agassiz, who marched his colleagues up a mountain to prove that ice ages had occurred. Filled with the pioneers, visionaries, eccentrics, and madmen, this is the history of science as it has never been told before.
Who was the author again?
John Gribben, G-R-I-B-B-I-N. Again, it's published by Penguin Books, and this copy I have is from, I'm looking for the year, copyright 2002, 2003, 2002.
Google will find it. Thank you very much for that.
By the way, that was the voice of Christy Winters, the conqueror of Akkad.
That's my new nickname. I like that.
What, you went head-to-head with Sargon or something?
Yesterday.
Ooh.
Good for you, I guess. Sargon, though.
So I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to bring my stuff out there.
I couldn't.
He has to put
Christy,
out.
I couldn't resist. I couldn't.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You can get the word out. I mean, more people should go watch the video because apparently, according to some people, I wrecked him. And also, I would also recommend checking out Michael Rollins' White Knights of the Manosphere Debate Edition. That really summed up the range of comments. And actually, some of the comments were, really not very reflective and sort of giving opinions, and then some were just, dissents into pure misogyny. But he goes over the range of that quite well.
Yeah, I guess we can call that progress. Not all the comments were pure misogyny.
Yeah, I think it is.
Awesome, progress. Yeah.
The Skeptic Feminist channel, go check it out.
Yeah, the Skeptic Feminist is highly recommended for me too, just in general. It was back to the History of Science book. That reminds me of a book that I read. Oh God, 10 years ago. It was called Copernicus's Secret. That was focused more closely on Copernicus and like the development of his theories and sort of his life in science. And there were a lot of books like that. There about 10 or 15 years ago, it seemed like there was a whole bunch of books that were published that were sort of science history books. Looking into not the scientists who developed influential ideas and how they came up with it and what their process was and what their lives were like. It was a really interesting sort of subgenre of science literature. I haven't really paid much attention to it lately, but anyone who's interested in not just like learning about the ideas of science, but the history of it and how we got these ideas, that's definitely something you should check out.
On that note, actually Richard Carrier is coming out with a new book called Science Education in the Early Roman Empire. Ooh. It's due out October 1st.
That sounds interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, he's done a lot with ancient science, and I think this is going to be one of his first major publications on that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm a big Carrier fan. I always sort of I love when he writes about his Jesus myth stuff.
Yeah.
Because the only reason I don't completely go along with that is because it is still sort of a minority opinion among scholars, and I just don't know enough. Like I don't have
a series coming up on that.
Really?
Yeah, my next A Different Atheist Reads, I'm going to be reviewing Bart Ehrman's Did Jesus Exist? Pisa. And what I've decided, what Ehrman doesn't do is he doesn't write the book I wanted him to write. So I'm going to, in the first episode, lay out my case of why I think the evidence that we have is best explained by the historical Jesus thesis as the most probable explanation.
Oh,
and then I'll review his book.
So you'll rewrite his book first?
Yeah, first I'll tell him how he should have written it, and then I'll say how he did it, and I'll show why mine was better.
That's awesome.
He's
New
just
critic.
a professor. Yeah.
That's great. I guess it's okay if you admit that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
I always try when I review movies. I try to avoid rewriting the movie, but when I can't help myself, I always try to make a note in my review, like, okay, I'm going to kind of rewrite the movie here. I know I'm not supposed to do that, but here you go.
Well, there are some movies out there that desperately need rewriting, and I think our last Hangout was an eminent example of that.
Yeah, although there's another movie coming out in a couple of days with a superficially similar premise from the other comic book company that will probably not have, hopefully will not have the problems that the one we talked about last month had. So, it's really, I was talking with a friend about, because I'm talking about Civil War, which comes out next Friday, and Marvel Comics. I didn't even realize this because I wasn't paying attention, but a friend of mine pointed out that Marvel did the exact opposite with its movie of what Warner Brothers and DC did with the Batman Superman movie last month, where they actually allowed critics to post early reviews of it, and because they knew that it was a good movie.
That's
and everybody was going to like it. So now it has, like, I haven't checked it lately, but when I checked it last week, it had a Rotten Tomatoes rating of like 95%.
Holy crow!
Because the critics who reviewed it really liked it and were allowed to released their reviews. So now the tomatometer rating, the movie's not even out yet, and it has like a 95%. And I don't think it hasn't been certified, because Rotten Tomatoes requires like a minimum number of reviews before they'll say, okay, it's officially, has this rating. But preliminary rating is incredibly high, because Marvel actually had confidence in its movie and did this really savvy thing of playing against the negative press that the DC movie got, and said, well, let's let them know how good our movie is early,
You suppose anybody at DC is listening here and figuring, well, okay, what are we doing something wrong here, or do you think they're in a bubble of their own as it comes to that?
It seems like every time they try to learn, they learn the wrong lesson. Like somebody said, I think it was James Gunn, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy. He wrote an article right after Deadpool came out, saying, okay, don't learn the wrong lesson. Because people are either Hollywood studio executives are going to look at a movie like Deadpool that kind of, from an outsider's perspective, came out of nowhere. Because comic book fans know who Deadpool is, but he's not like, before this he wasn't like a huge mainstream figure like Superman or Batman or something. And this Deadpool movie makes a huge pile of money, and the lesson that James Gunn was afraid that Hollywood executives would take from it was, it was a raunchy R-rated movie, so let's make more of those. And they'll ignore the fact that it was really smart, and it was funny, and it was fun, and people enjoyed themselves when they were in the theater, and it didn't depress people, and it didn't irritate or alienate people, and it wasn't embarrassed by the fact that it was a superhero movie. Like, there's all these...
And it didn't take itself super seriously, like so many of these movies these days are.
And it wasn't 3 hours long. And so if Warner Brothers would take those lessons and would say, hey, let's make smart movies that aren't embarrassed of themselves, and that aren't full of themselves, and that aren't marathons,
and aren't trying to be ridiculously arch.
Oh yeah.
Make these people watch Cinema Sins.
Yeah, just sit them all down and say, look, just watch.
Or Red Letter.
Yes.
All of the tropes, like biting into a piece of fruit to make you look like an asshole.
Oh God! Yeah.
I can't actually watch things now without it going bing in my head.
Yes. Yes, those videos and spending any amount of time on the website TV tropes. Like you edit your own, honest trailers together while you're watching the movie. Like,
can I also do a shout out to Game of Thrones? If people don't know it, it's hilarious. It's basically a guy who's summarizing the Game of Thrones series after each episode and doing it from the gay perspective, his gay perspective. It's amazing. Game of Thrones, check it out. It starts, I think, in about season 2, and it goes all the way through now to season 6. So.
That's cool. I've never watched Game of Thrones. I've never found it. I've never felt compelled to check that out. But
it might be worth your time, Steve. It's got some neat qualities to it. And one of the things that challenges me is that you're dealing with a world where magic does indeed work.
Right.
And
but it's like
that's a little upsetting, and it's dislocating for me a little bit. But I'm trying to stay with it and say, okay, if that's possible, then how do you really deal with that in a rational basis? It almost forces you to think a little irrationally, because magic, like it or not, is irrational.
Yeah.
I've got a pitch for you, Steve, that might appeal to your English lit side.
Okay.
Which is that the gripping thing for me about Game of Thrones is the way that Martin routinely inverts the archetype. And so when you go into these stories, fantasy stories, there are archetypes of what characters are supposed to be, and he deliberately malforms these archetypes and twists them into new directions, which opens up spaces for entirely new discourses. So if you look at it from looking at it from a literary point of view, I think that you would find it very interesting to see how characters are taken into directions that they've never been taken before.
That's a good pitch.
Thank you.
That's a good pitch. I might check it out. I mean, I'm sure that I'll give it a shot at some point. It's just one of those things that it's like when it first got to be a big show in its first season and everybody was talking about it. It was one of those things that I was just like, yeah, nah. I've never been a big fantasy guy, like high fantasy guy. I've never been like a dragons and warring lands and blah blah blah. That puts me to sleep. But
I'll tell you this: although it does have that stuff, it downplays it a lot. It's more about swords and intrigue and stuff like that.
Political
And
intrigue.
politics.
There's a lot of
Very,
political
very
intrigue.
heavy politics.
I
And
mean,
also the way that they, again, subverting the archetypes. They're very strong female characters. Homosexuality in the television show, especially, is brought out as something that happens in the culture, and there are some religious implications, but also some people who tolerate it. So there's some interesting social commentaries too about what would social norms be like in a different situation, given the brutality of, let's say, pre-industrial, sort of Middle Ages or medieval societies. And it's in that way sort of a thought experiment.
It's definitely a hole in my current cultural literacy, because like I get requests occasionally to do videos about it, it'll be like, do a 5 things video about Game of Thrones, and I'm like, well, shit, I would have to watch it.
You know nothing, Steve Shives.
Well, at this point, I mean, it'd take some serious binge watching, because what is this, season 6?
Yeah.
I watched the first 4 seasons in 4 days when I was at chickenpox.
Oh man, Iron Man there.
Yeah.
it's going to end
It's
soon.
quite Moorish, though. You finish one episode and you want another, so it is quite Moorish.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's how I watched this most recent season of Daredevil. That's how I watched it, because my wife and I we watched it together, which makes it a lot easier, because you can just be like, okay, we're gonna both clear our schedules, and we're just gonna drive through it, and we finished it like in 2 days.
That's the best way to watch Daredevil.
Yeah. Oh God. If I didn't have relationships to maintain or responsibilities to fulfill, like, that's all I would do. I would just park my ass in front of Netflix and be like, okay, Daredevil, great, and then 12 hours later, what's next? Oh, House of Cards, let's try that.
You can do it. All you have to do is just abandon everyone you love.
Exactly. That's my perfect life. I just want to abandon everyone I love and everything that gives me purpose and joy, and just watch Netflix forever.
I couldn't do that. I'd have to get out of the house at some point or other. Just do something. Get in the car and drive.
Yeah, breathe air.
Exactly.
Go outside and breathe some air.
I think you could call that a staycation, where you take a week off, but you don't leave the house, and you just get in enough groceries so that you never have to get out of your pajamas, take the phone off the hook, and maybe just collect the mail and deal with it on the Sunday night before you have to re-enter the real world.
Have like a re-entry period scheduled in,
Yeah, the last 12 hours, before you go to bed Sunday night.
Walk outside like,
what is this?
Check your emails, check your YouTube channel, whatever.
I'm the type of person anyway that when I go on vacation to like another town, I just want to stay in the hotel. Like, I've always been that way. I've been that way since I was a little kid. Like, we never really went any place that far away. But if I went somewhere where we had to stay overnight at a hotel, I was always, even if it was like an amusement park. Like, I remember when I was like, I don't know, 10 or 11, I went with a friend of mine's family. We went to an amusement park, like, far enough away that we stayed the night and came back the next day. And even though it was, we're going to go ride roller coasters and ride the water slide, I was still like, can't we just hang out in the hotel room and watch TV? I've always been that kind of a person.
yeah, much the same.
Yeah.
When I cruised my family like 8 years ago, when my grandmother was convinced she was dying, so she just wanted to have one big family vacation. You know how grandmothers are. But we basically would come into an island, and everyone's like, hey, let's go on the island. I'm like, I'll stay in the ship. It's fine. It's cool.
Yeah, the ship is cool.
Yeah, my little cabin. That's great.
There's
Rock
something
her gently.
there's something appealing to me about the idea of like a home away from home. Where like you're somewhere other than where you usually are, but it's still kind of like your home base, and it makes me reluctant to leave it.
Yeah, you're comfortable there, but it's a change of venue. It's a chance for you to get away from what is, probably for 90% of the time, where you live, and just change of scenery, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
For me, that's. Oh, go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Christy. Go ahead.
For me, that's Amsterdam, because it's there's a family that I've kind of gotten to know, and I rent their flat out, and it's right downtown, and you go there, and you've got the bikes and the canals and the houses that are kind of crooked, and it's just a completely, in some ways, I'm so stimulated by it, because you can hear the traffic at night, and it's always around you, that when I come home, I feel more relaxed, because it's quieter at home. So I kind of go away for the weekend to be stimulated, so I can come home and feel like I've actually stepped it down a notch.
Yeah.
Christy, if I may ask, have you ever been to Concertgebouw when you were in Amsterdam?
No, I tend to sort of stay in the central area, like by the flower tulip markets and down that way, sort of by Madame Tussauds is where the flat is.
Okay. Reason why I ask is because one of the things, I suppose I'm actually finding myself in the position of putting together a bucket list. And one of the things I would like to do is hear a concert at Concertgebouw, because it's supposed to be an amazing venue, the wonderful sonics, and hear either Royal Amsterdam or Rotterdam or somebody play there.
Yeah, I go to Amsterdam for whatever reason because it's a city that runs the gauntlet of everything that is amazing and also slightly disturbing about humanity.
What, do you work for their travel office?
Well, you can go to do that thing and then wander back into the city and go to the red light district, and then you can go to a coffee shop and smoke a big fat spliff. I mean, and then you can go in the canal the next day, and then you can go to visit Anne Frank's house and like mourn what happened to the Nazis. It's an incredible city.
So
So then go back to the red light district.
Yeah. Yeah, you get depressed, you go back to the red light district.
Or play some poker. They've got poker. You can do live poker there. So yeah, it's everything, Amsterdam.
The ultimate in eclecticism, it sounds like.
Yeah, you can go to see Van Goghs, or get a bike and try to navigate the traffic and risk your life.
I'm not that brave. I mean, I like to ride, but I'm not that crazy. I still remember traffic in India when I was there in 1985, and I watched these kids weaving in and out with bicycles and motorcycles with a couple of cars, and if there were rules of the road, you couldn't prove it by me. It was completely nuts.
Yeah, well, in Amsterdam, there are so many cycles there that when you pull into the main train station, they have a parking lot, a 2-story parking lot that is just for bicycles.
Wow.
And it's packed. And then when you walk through the city, there are just bicycles like hooked up to everything that is standing upright, and you can't lift a bike over.
Wow. It's so fascinating to me that things are so different in the U.S. and in Europe about bicycles, because in Europe it seems like the presence of the bicycle is accepted and encouraged and accommodated for in cities, and like in Hagerstown they're trying to sort of incorporate like more accommodation for bike riders, and we're in the sort of the growing pains phase where like they're putting in the bike lanes and everybody hates it because they're like, oh, why can't they just have cars, and I'm kind of in that space too, because I'm just not used to it, and I have to keep reminding myself, like, there are cities much larger than this all over the world where people ride bikes, and it's okay. We're just going to have to get used to it, and it's a lot better this way. It's cleaner. It's better, but we're
depending, it might be the most effective way of travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are bikes now that people fold them up and you can carry them over your shoulder. I just got a scooter, like one of those stand-up upright, like the ones that 7-year-olds use.
Yeah.
But it's made for adults, and yeah, it cuts my work time, down at half, and half the ride is downhill, so I can kind of coast a bit. And yeah, I can also take it with me on the train if I have to travel longer, and I don't have to pay extra for it when I get on the U-Bahn. I just fold it up and put it I just throw it over my shoulder, literally, and sit on the U-Bahn. So yeah, I mean, as cycle technology also evolves, people will be more likely, if they have those bike lanes, to just throw on a helmet, unfold their bike, ride it to work, fold it back up, and stick it onto their desk.
Yeah. I know. I don't even own a bicycle, but those collapsible bikes makes me want to buy one.
And don't they? They're so cool.
They're so cool. It's like it just folds up. It's like it's no bigger than one of the wheels. It's like, I want one of those.
You don't have to worry about a lock or that it's going to go missing or get rained on or anything.
Now, is there any difference with the commuting times in, say, Europe compared to the American commuting times? Because I just know here, living in D.C., there are people who are super commuters who have 2, 3, 4-hour commutes just to get into this crazy city.
No, people don't do that here. I mean, maybe if you are working at a university and your spouse works at a university in another city and you have a place in between, but no, I mean, most people, the central planning in Europe is such that they keep the population density really intense. So if you fly over it, you're going to see a lot of green fields and forests, the Black Forest, and whereas in the U.S., because of elbow room, there's just sprawl everywhere, and that really transforms the transportation needs of the population.
Yeah, I know there are people who live near me who commute to DC every day. There's actually a really large community of people in Smithsburg, which is like 2 towns over from where I live, that uh, that work in DC and make that trip every day. And it's not like a super long trip from this area to DC. It's maybe an hour and a half, depending on traffic. But still, it's like, I guess the cost of living is so different. It's so much cheaper to live in this area that I guess it works out. It makes it worth it to live up here and then to work in DC. But it's not something I would enjoy.
Yeah, and London and Paris, those cities, city of 7 million, you're going to have so many people, they can't have everybody downtown. But then they have
Yeah.
quite a lot of train lines. But the traffic does around the M25 and stuff around central London, it's bogged down a lot just because you've got 7 million people in one space. So there is some of that, leading out the trains out into the suburb areas where people might get on a train and be on a train for 50 or 60 minutes in each direction. But I don't know people routinely who are traveling, 3 hours a day in a car. I just don't know those kinds of people.
I know people like that, and they are just driving in DC. If anybody's never driven in DC, especially if you're not a DC resident, because I'm certainly not overly familiar with the city, driving in Washington DC is a hellish experience.
That's
for
what
me.
I heard.
It's been so. Go ahead.
I'm probably going to be there this summer because I'm doing a giant road trip around the country. So that'll be fun.
Have
Do you know-
GPS.
Have
I don't know if
good
you guys-
GPS.
No,
Yeah,
Top Gear. I don't know if you guys know Top Gear, but there was an episode where the London Marathon path was done up in the city, and they had a person who'd run it before start at the same time as a guy driving, and they both had to do the distance of the London Marathon to see who would finish first, and the runner won.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. The last time I had to, because most of the time when I visit DC, I just take the metro in, because it's just so much easier to get around using public transportation. See, if you're just but
Except for when the DC Metro tries to kill you.
well, yeah, there's generally speaking, but I was driving in it a couple months ago, and it was just, I mean, the worst. It was just the worst. And it's like are these streets like the staircases at Hogwarts? Like, are they moving? Because I swear to God, I took a left turn here, and I should be here, but I don't see anywhere where I'm supposed to be.
That sounds like me in any city. Because I seriously cannot drive in a city.
And those are grids. You guys are driving on straight lines.
Yeah, maybe it's us. Maybe it's us. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But I'm going. The next time I'll be in town will be for the Reason Rally next month, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do, if I'm going to take the metro in or if I'm going to drive all the way in, because I only got my hotel for one night for Saturday into Sunday, and my check-in time isn't until about halfway through the actual rally on Saturday. So I'm thinking I might drive in and park, and then I can go to the rally in the morning, and then I won't have to worry about having all my stuff with me, at the rally. I can just go back and check in when it's check-in time, because my hotel is only like maybe a 10-minute walk from the Lincoln Memorial.
The only thing worse than driving in DC is trying to find parking in DC.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's just
Can
a
I-
fucking nightmare.
As
Anyway.
a European, can I ask? You're going for one night, overnight, to the rally, right? Just to
yeah.
verify. Why don't you just put it in a backpack? I mean, I went to Pisa and back, and I went with a big purse and a backpack for 3-4 days.
That's an option I've considered.
That way you
I
don't
mean-
have to drive up and do all that stuff. Just literally throw it on your back and then get to the hotel when you get to the hotel.
Yeah, I've thought
DC
about that.
security gets a little weird about backpacks too. You have to remember
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah.
especially if anything occurs on the mall, anything of large import, they're going to do bag checks, and they're going to get very strict. No
Yeah.
bottles,
Yeah, but he's not
definitely
gonna
nothing.
bring a
Yeah.
hairdryer with him.
The Lincoln Memorial too, and you've got to believe they're going to be more than a little bit itchy about backpacks
Yeah.
around a major landmark like that.
Well, especially with a bunch of no good, untrustworthy atheists in town.
Oh yeah. Oh,
You know what
evil
trouble we
us,
are.
evil us. Ooh.
We're a bunch of trouble. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'll do.
Yeah, personally, I'm taking. I think there's a couple bus meetups around the Northeast.
Mhm.
I'm taking one from Harrisburg.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I'll probably end up driving in, just for nothing else. It'll give me something to complain about if something goes wrong.
Well, I know I'm driving. It'll give me a chance to see what the Mustang will do on a long run.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that thing's been a joy to drive too. It's just there's something about a V8 soundtrack. I love it.
So is everyone coming to the Reason Rally next month?
Not just yeah, but hell yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say I should pick a 2018 or 2017 convention or organize it where we can actually all have enough time to save up for it, know where it's going to be, book the hotels, and then have a meetup.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be nice.
Actually, the Pennsylvania atheist groups canceled our convention this year just to make sure people could get to the Reason Rally.
Yeah. But they're already. I noticed they put up a poll on Facebook. They're already sort of putting out feelers for who they would like, who possible
for 2017.
For 2017, yeah.
2017 is probably going to be in Philly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's going to be in Philadelphia.
Oh, cool.
How do they run those? They have conference panels? Could they do a conference panel on YouTube atheism?
That would be a fucking nightmare.
I know one thing I want to do is, again, as a member of NOFS and FFRF, I would love to do something regional coming out of Cleveland. I just want to make more noise and bring people to Cleveland and because I look at what's going on at Oklahoma at Free OK, and they have just these huge conferences there. I would love to do something like that here on the North Coast.
It
would be nice.
I'm sorry?
Where did you say you were?
Cleveland.
Well, I think 2018 Pennsylvania is going to have it in Pittsburgh. If you aren't too much of a Browns fan.
Well, hey, that's neither here nor there with me. I mean, the Browns reinvent themselves every 2 years anyway, so I sort of shrug my shoulders and say, "What the hell?" And FFRF's conference, their conference this year is going to be in Pittsburgh, and I'm absolutely there on that one too. So.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get out to that one too.
Yeah, the one in Madison last year was terrific. I cannot say enough good things about that.
I'm on the complete opposite side of the country.
So, the person at the Reason Rally is going to be Ray Comfort.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Ray Comfort's going to be at the Reason Rally, and we're all gonna pay attention to him and give him everything that he wants.
What does he
We
want?
can't help ourselves. He just wants people to pay attention to him.
I think the Reason Rally is probably not his audience. I don't know. Am I wrong?
Well, Steve, you're the one who's always said that he's spoken to more atheists. The problem is he may be doing a lot of speaking. For what I can tell, he's not doing a whole lot of listening. Yeah. Either that, or he just figures he's got his personality and his shtick, and that's pretty much it. So
yeah, I think Ray is one of those people, and I've never met him, so I don't know for sure. He's one of those people that I think if you could talk to him off script, he's probably not that bad of a guy, but he just, when he's doing the apologetics thing, he has his act, and that's all he's interested in doing, and he just doesn't ever move from that, because his audience isn't the people that he's talking to. He's gonna get into a bunch of conversations with atheists at the Reason Rally, and he's not going to really be talking to them. He's going to be recording it to show to Christians. To be like, look at all these atheists, and their minds are so closed, and they're not open to reason, and I gave them all these great arguments for why God has to exist, and they're just not listening to me because
because his arguments have been all dismantled 3 days from Sunday,
which is what we would say. But he's not, again, he's basically coming to the Reason Rally to get filmable material for his own shit. And we're only going to be too happy to provide him with that. It's kind of a weird sort of space I'm in about it, where it's like, okay, we're all going to go, and I'm sure a bunch of people with YouTube channels who are at the Reason Rally are going to be putting up videos of, look, here's how look at me arguing with Ray Comfort at the Reason Rally, and it's going to be, some of it will probably be fun, but at the end of the day, if your opinion is that Ray is a bad guy, and you don't like him, then by going up and engaging with him at the Reason Rally, you're pretty much just giving him what he wants. You
I
know.
mean, I'm sure I'm going to be running onto some believers, at least in transit to the event and whatever else have you. So, look, I said, look, I'm not here to argue. I'm here to spend time with people that I admire and that I know. Argue with somebody else, because
Yeah.
I mean, it's 24 hours, and it's not even that really. And I just want to spend some time, you know, with like-minded people, and hopefully run into, this guy in a black baseball hat who's got this YouTube channel.
I'll be around. I'll be looking for you. I'll be
Well,
there.
the only thing I think is going to make it difficult, and I am seriously knocking wood about this, I want six figures there. I want
No,
100,000
that would be cool.
people at the Reason rally. I
That
am
would be cool.
stone dead serious about that.
Is anyone live streaming it?
I'm sure somebody. I've got to believe that somebody's going to be doing it. I would. It wouldn't surprise me if Silverman would be making some focus on that.
I would think.
Maybe
Yeah.
put it up on Atheist TV or something.
That's what I was thinking, because they introduced that Atheist TV thing about 2 years ago and haven't really done anything with it, and this is the perfect opportunity.
Absolutely.
If you can't make it to the rally, you can watch it live streamed on Atheism TV. But yeah, I don't know, because they didn't really do anything with that last time. It was recorded, and there were a lot of videos put up of the speeches and stuff, but there wasn't like an official live stream where you could just tune in if you couldn't make it to the location. I wouldn't see, other than maybe just they can't afford it or there's some kind of technical limitation. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't want to do that. But yeah, I mean, I'll be there. I'm gonna fight the urge to just stay in my hotel. Because see, I'll be there by myself. I'll be traveling alone, so it'll just be me. So there'll be no one to drag me out. There'll be no one to be like, "Hey, come on, you got to go out. You're going to the Reason rally."
Tell us what hotel you're in. We will drag you out.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you. I registered at the Hyatt Regency.
Which one? There are several.
The Hyatt Regency, Washington.
Because I'm at the airport.
Oh, really? I'm the one I registered with. I registered like 2 months ago. It was the top one at the Reason Rally website that offered the group discount. So,
Yeah.
but
No,
yeah.
I wish I could
I'm
do
at
that.
Reagan International. They had a hell of a deal. It surprised the hell out of me. I think it was like 109 a night, and I sort of picked my jaw off the floor and said,
Yeah.
"Click."
That's about what mine is, and yeah, it's when you register as part of the when you get the group discount, it does make a huge difference.
Yeah, and it's a Hyatt. You don't do a whole lot better.
I know, it'll probably be the nicest hotel my ass has ever stayed in. All due respect to the fine facilities at the Pennsylvania rally or the Pennsylvania conference that I attended last year, which was a wonderful hotel, but it's the Hyatt.
I must confess, if they were going to have repeat visitors or anybody at the rally, the one person I'd love to see back there is Adam from Mythbusters.
Oh man, yeah, his speech was awesome.
I thought of all of them, I thought he just ripped it. From E equals MC fucking squared to the person who's watching over him and forgiving him when he screws up and all that, and this person I've been talking about is me.
Yeah,
I
that was
thought
great.
that was just plain brilliant.
Yeah, and he also in his build up to that punchline, he also said one of my favorite lines, which was he believes that inside every tool is a hammer.
Yes, as an engineer, I will completely agree with that. I have used some interesting tools as hammers in my day.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I was there for the first Reason rally. I left. I didn't stay for the entire thing because I didn't get a hotel that year, and I wanted to come back and beat the traffic. So I stayed until about maybe 6 p.m. And then left. But yeah, of the speakers that I was able to see, he was definitely my favorite. I mean, his speech was just awesome, and it was funny, and it was it sort of put across like an atheist identity, but in a way that wasn't combative or argumentative. It was just like, hey, here's who I am. Here's why this makes sense to me. Here's why I am a happy, fulfilled, moral person, even though I don't ascribe to a religious tradition. And I thought it was just awesome.
It made me really happy that we have him representing atheism and atheists, because he came across as bright, as engaged and intelligent, but not overbearing or any of that. It was a wonderful performance, if you can call it a performance. I mean, he just sort of put his stuff out there.
Yeah.
And indeed, right at the beginning, he was saying he was trying to, form his thoughts and exactly how he wanted to, give expression to, to a crowd like what he was looking at there. And then he proceeded to absolutely bury it. He just totally owned the moment.
Yeah, I mean that was a great one, and the star power for this one coming up is really surprising.
The one that surprises me is Johnny Depp.
That
one came out of left field.
And I've been thinking ever since they announced it. I was like, my first reaction was, wow, that's really cool that Johnny Depp's going to be there. And then my second thought was, what's he going to say? Like, what's Johnny Depp's speech going to be at the Reason Rally? I guess we'll find out in like a little over a month. But
yep.
that was like my second thought. I was like, is he just going to come out and wave? I mean, like, what's he going to say? I like Johnny Depp, but Johnny always he's one of those guys that, like, as an actor, as when he's giving a performance, he's always like incredibly brilliant and charismatic. But I always get the impression when he's just being himself, like he always seems uncomfortable. When he's just David said he doesn't have to say a thing, right? He could just come out and be like, "Hey, I'm Johnny Depp."
Yeah, in a way that sounds a little bit like Henry Fonda. I remember his Playboy interview of a long time ago, and Fonda's always, I can't remember anything exact about his interview except that he said he always seemed like he was more comfortable in character than out of character.
Yeah. There are a lot of really big name actors that I get that impression off of, like when they're playing a character, it's like they're just these incredibly commanding presences, but when they're just themselves, it's like Robert De Niro is kind of like that. Like whenever I see Robert De Niro as himself in an interview, he always just seems like, yeah, okay, hi, how you doing?
Yeah, he's infamous for being a terrible interview.
Yeah, because he doesn't really give you anything. Like, you always watch a De Niro interview, and it's like you always feel like the interviewer has to drag things out of him, because he'll just sit there and go, yeah.
That would probably be me if I were famous. To be like, so, how you doing? Yeah, good. How's your hotel? Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So, this movie or book that you're doing, it's good. You should get it. Why? Yeah. Because it gives me money.
Yeah, I need the money. I wrote it and I'm selling it, and I want people to buy it so I can have the money.
It gives me food. I like food.
Food is a good thing, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to spend the money on things I want and need, so.
Mainly want.
Mainly want.
A lot of want.
Needs are very basic. That's probably more than De Niro would say. Just ask him a lot of really short, incredibly specific questions that require just 1 or 2 word answers, and you can eventually build up a pretty good interview with him.
With some heavy editing.
Yeah. I'm going to cut out most of the questions. It's like, that reminds me, just completely random thought, but I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey again recently, and there's that scene where they're playing the interview with, like, the BBC interviewing the astronauts on the Discovery, and the interview host notes that it took our transmissions 7 minutes to get from Earth to Discovery, and then their answers took another 7 minutes to come back, and that delay has been edited out of this broadcast. And every time I watch that, I think, God damn it, that must have been an awkward interview. Or like, you ask a question, and the questions that they're asked are like, so how is it going? And then you have to sit there for 15 minutes until you can ask your next question. Like, that must have been awkward. Did they just sit there like? Oh, here he comes. Oh, he's going to ask another question. Hang on. Yeah, everything's good. We like it here.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Can you repeat it?
Oh God, yes. You kind of broke up there on the end of that last one. Could you ask that again? Jesus Christ.
I hope they did something for that 14-minute time period. I can't imagine how awful that must
Yeah.
be for, like, when we send someone to Mars or something like that. Those interviews are going to be horrible.
Oh my God.
I remember how bad it was when you used to have video conferencing systems over ISDN, and there was about a 2-second delay because it makes you feel so awkward compared to a normal face-to-face conversation.
Well, yeah, because
The-
you can't have any rhythm. You know, everything is like
You might as well just have a situation where you ask the questions, you string it over in a single transmission, and you send it out, and then everybody answering, gives their answers back. Just single block transmit, single
Yeah.
block receive. I mean, there'd be no interaction. I mean, how do you have interaction with a 14-minute time delay? And actually, 14 minutes is being short because from here to Jupiter. I think it's at least a half an hour one way.
Yeah. I wondered if that was like an accurate time. Unless I guess maybe Stanley Kubrick was thinking we would have been able to break the laws of physics and
Yeah.
send radio transmissions faster than the speed of light or something.
186,000 miles per second. It's not just a good idea, it's the law.
Yeah.
Wait until we get subspace radio.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just invent subspace like they did in Star Trek, and that solves everything.
Yeah, let's just. The only thing that gets me about Star Trek sometimes is it feels like they're making stuff up as they go along, and never really justifying any of it.
Well, but that's what I like about it. That's what I like about it. Actually, I did a video, a Star Trek video, a couple weeks ago about Captain Jellicoe from Next Generation, and I want to do some more of those because I really like doing that. And the next one I'm going to do, originally I wanted to do it about how everybody dies when they use the transporter, but people have done that before. So I thought instead I would do. It would be about how if you like, there's basically no rational answer to that question. If you watch the Star Trek shows, like if you ask the question, how does the transporter work? There is no answer because it contradicts itself so often. Like there are episodes where it's like they're talking to each other while they're being beamed out, and you think, okay, well then they can't be being taken apart because they're still able to talk and interact. But then there's episodes where it's like they're stored as data in the computer when they're being transported. You know, it is like they're making it up as they go along. There is no.
Or like that episode with Barkley where he like reaches out and pulls someone into the beam.
Yeah.
It's like.
And he's awake. He's like aware during the beaming process. Like he's able to perceive what's going on. It's like, so are his molecules being separated or not?
Right.
You know?
Steve, have you read the book the Science of Star Trek, the one that Lawrence Krauss wrote?
I read it a long time.
I forgot about that one actually. I meant to read that. Yeah.
Yeah,
He actually signed my copy of it when I went down to see The Unbelievers. But the thing that has always bugged me about the whole process of the transporter is the enormous amount of energy that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're converting matter into energy, and that matter weighs somewhere between 100, 200 pounds, however much you're transporting. I mean, that is enough energy to dismantle the planet. I think if we became uncontrolled for whatever reason, it's just enormous amounts of energy. How you could ever get a transporter to actually work, I think. Well, in fact, and Krauss makes this point in the book. It's just it's inconceivable.
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan just said in the chat that the Heisenberg compensators fix everything. So which it's one of those things, and Dave just also sort of cautioned us not to overthink a TV show. I mean, it's sort of like the line in the Mystery Science Theater theme song: "Just repeat to yourself, it's just a show. I should really just relax."
La la la.
But one thing I would say there is kind of going back to something you were saying about binge watching on Netflix. I recently went through a lot of the Star Trek episodes, and I noticed like whenever you binge watch it, you start to pick up on things and themes that you never did before, like only watching it once a week. And it was just amazing. I was sitting there going, how did I never pick up on that before? Like they treat Troy and Riker as this romance that could never be, yet every other episode they're off with somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny you mentioned that. I've been watching a lot of Next Generation on Netflix the last couple of weeks too. And it's one of those shows like nowadays they know going in that a show is going to be, released on a streaming service or released on Blu-ray, so they kind of write it with that in mind. But back, 25 years ago, it was a once a week show and they didn't really worry about it. And yeah, now like you watch a lot of those episodes all at once and you start to think like, wait a minute, none of this makes any sense. Like these characterizations are completely inconsistent.
Well, they weren't thinking back in those days. They weren't thinking in terms of a continuous arc like they do with, starting with Hill Street Blues and then NYPD Blue and a lot of these other stories where, there's actually a problem if you don't watch the episodes out of sequence or watch them in sequence, I should say, because because there is growth in the characters, there's an arc to the characters, and in fact, I mean, if you take a look at TNG, I think you'll see that they spent the first years just sorting their characters out.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You can be a little off-putting when you watch a series all together like that, because especially when it comes to romantic relationships, just kind of like, where the hell did that come from? But when you're watching it once a week, it's like, oh yeah, there was a week between last episode and this episode, so
Right.
stuff happened. But when it's back to back, it's like now they're in love. When the last episode, she like slapped him in the face for talking to her. Like,
Yeah.
It was kind of funny because I went straight from watching all of Next Gen straight into Voyager, and I'm like, wow, they're lifting a lot of plots right out of Next Gen.
Yeah, Voyager was basically like a redo of Next Gen in terms of the plots. Yeah, that's what a lot of people noticed that at the time. More observant Trek fans noticed that at the time, and that was one of the big knocks on Voyager when it was actually on the air. People were saying like they're just redoing Next Gen.
And it was funny because a few episodes actually admitted that they were doing that. Yeah, like they'd say something and they're like, "Hey, didn't Picard have to deal with that?" I'm like, guys, just if you're gonna do it, don't admit it.
And then when they started giving Janeway all of Picard's old enemies, like, okay, now Janeway hates the Borg. Now Janeway has a thing with Q. Like, oh, okay, we can't make up anything new for her. Like she's gonna get all of Picard's old shit because Picard's not doing this anymore.
Time to change the writers.
And then in Enterprise, they actually started plagiarizing themselves. I remember there were at least 3 or 4 Enterprise episodes where the plot was Captain Archer and another member of the crew get kidnapped by aliens or put in an alien prison or have to escape from an alien ship. It's like, Jesus, how many times are we going to do this, Archer and another crew member have to escape from aliens plot?
Well, how many times does Next Gen have some sort of holodeck malfunction?
Yeah. Why does anybody use the holodeck? It never goes right.
Well, actually, also in Voyager, I think they did at least one time-traveling episode a season.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Voyager got really lazy with the time travel stuff.
And if they're not doing that, they're inventing a new particle, a Verteron particle, or a Huziron wave, or they're playing wonderfully fast and loose with the laws of physics.
My favorite. I'll just mention this and then I'll wrap it up because it's after we've been at this for an awesome hour. I'm just watching the Next Gen episodes on Netflix recently. I realized how just sort of casually they introduced stuff that wound up being major parts of the Star Trek I almost said mythology.
for some it's a theology, it feels like, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's basically it's our contemporary theology.
That's why they call it canon.
Yeah, exactly. But like the Cardassians, which wound up being this incredibly prominent, important species later on for Next Gen and Deep Space Nine, and they're just sort of mentioned. Like, there's not any build-up to the Cardassians. It's just like, oh yeah, the Cardassians, we had a war with them. We never mentioned it before, but it was this huge war, and now we have peace, and they're these really important people. Like, oh, okay, I guess. Like everybody, have you all known about the Cardassians all along? Oh yeah, everybody knows about the Cardassians. Chief O'Brien fought them. He was in the war. really? That never came up before.
They retcon their history just like a lot of other people do.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like the feeling of things being made up as they go along. A lot of people don't feel the same way. I enjoy that. I enjoy the inconsistency. Like I've always said, if if I was ever given the chance to do like a Star Trek show, I would intentionally put things in to fuck with the continuity. Like I would put things in where it couldn't possibly fit definitely in any, like they would say, because the question now is, well, would it be like in the movie universe, like the J.J. Abrams rebooted universe, or would it be in the old version? And I would love to do one that could be either one, and never commit to one or the other. Where people would be like, well, which one is it? Is it like the classic universe or is it the new universe? I don't know. Could be either one, and it would drive Star Trek fans crazy because we have to know. Like we have to have, it has to be nailed down. We have to be like, but why do the Klingons have ridges in their head, but they didn't have them in the original series? There has to be a reason. We have to explain it.
They don't talk about it without
The answer is simple: makeup budget.
Yeah, they do. Well, like what Matthew was about to say, what Worf said in Trials and Tribulations. Oh, we don't talk about it. There's a reason, but we don't talk about it.
I think Shives declaring war on canon.
So I think I didn't notice any of those things when I first saw TNG because I was 9 when that show came out. So I didn't care about all these little minutia stuff that we think about now. So, and I haven't seen the show since then. So that's why your Jellicoe video was so interesting to me.
Yeah. I don't know. I really like Captain Jellicoe a lot. He's one of my favorite guest characters that they've ever done.
It was Ronnie Cox. Of course you'd like him.
Ronnie, yeah, come on. It was like Ronnie Cox is commanding the Enterprise. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, folks, for joining me in the room as always. Thanks to all of you who are watching. Thanks to all of you who are my Patreon patrons, because I could not do what I do without your support. So if you are watching this and you are a patron of mine, thank you so much for your contribution. If you're considering becoming a patron of mine because you like what I do and you want to help me continue to do it, you can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives and become a patron of this channel. I would really, really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who has been with me today, and we'll do this again at the end of the month, because there are 5 Sundays, as I said, in May. So we'll be back for one more of these before the Reason Rally, and then I'll have met at least 1 or 2 of you, because I know a few of you are going to be at the Reason Rally. So yeah, thanks for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next month.